This is an overview of the Bible, and I'm Ozzy. This overview is to help people get a big picture of the Bible, how the books fit together, the main storyline from beginning to end, and to give you a sense of the historical timeline, key events, and the major figures so that you'll be able to follow the story as you move along. Whether you've been reading the Bible for years or this is your first time, this is designed to give you a solid foundation. So let's begin in the beginning. Genesis, the beginning. Genesis is the first book of both the Hebrew Bible and the Christian Bible, and it sets the stage for the entire biblical narrative. The book of Genesis can be divided into two major parts. First, the events: creation, fall, flood, and Babel. And the second major section of Genesis would be the people: Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph. Creation, Genesis 1 and 2. The opening chapters of Genesis describe God creating the universe. Genesis 1 presents the big picture, showing the creation of everything: light, sky, land, plants, animals, and humans. Genesis 2 zooms up and focuses on the creation, particularly of the humans. Some key points. Creation and the universe are repeatedly called good. Human beings are uniquely created in God's image, reflecting dignity and purpose. The creation of male and female as a binary is presented as part of God's good creation. The fall, Genesis 3. In Genesis 3, the man and the woman are dwelling in the paradise garden of the good creator God. A malevolent being enters the stage. Later in the book of the Revelation, this malevolent being is identified as the devil, slanderer, and the Satan, the accuser. He enters the stage and begins to tempt the man and the woman to disobey God's sole commandment. The woman, followed by the man, succumb to temptation and disobey God. This action leads to separation, first between the man and the woman, and between both of them and God. As a result of their disobedience, God judges them, and one of the judgments is they are banished from the garden and denied access to the tree of life. Genesis 3:15 has what's known as the Protevangelium, the first announcement of the good news. God declares that there will be enmity between the serpent and the woman and between their offspring. The offspring of the woman will crush the serpent's head, while the serpent will strike his heel. Next, sin continues, and the corruption of mankind results in the flood. This also introduces a new concept, that of covenant. In Genesis chapter 6, God says that he will enter into covenant with Noah, and in Genesis chapter 9, God establishes that covenant. Covenant is both a legal term and a relational term. In a legal way, it's similar to a legal document, such as a contract. But it's more than that, because it's also a relational agreement, a kinship, a marriage, an adoption, a friendship. These were well known in the ancient world, and they often involved the swearing of oaths with a form of a religious rite. The last key event is the Tower of Babel. Mankind again tries to disobey God, but God takes action to confuse the language to scatter them across the face of the earth. We now enter the section of Genesis dealing with the people, and the first person we'll look at is Abraham. Abraham is a man of faith. God covenants with Abraham, and Abraham believes that God is able to do what he promises. And by believing that God is able to do what he promises, God counts him as righteous. God enters into what's called the Abrahamic covenant. The Abrahamic covenant has three major parts: the land, the family, and the blessing. And right now we're going to look at the third part of it, the blessing, because through Abraham, all the peoples of the earth will be blessed. The next person we look at is Isaac, the child of promise to Abraham and Sarah. He would have two sons, Jacob and Esau. Jacob is one of the sons of Isaac and Rebekah, and he would go on to have 12 sons. He would also go on to wrestle with God, and God would change Jacob's name to Israel. Finally, Joseph. Joseph was one of Jacob's sons, and his brothers sold him into slavery into Egypt. While a slave in Egypt, God would raise him up that he would be able to save his family, and that would set the stage for the next great story in the Bible. The next book of the Bible is Exodus, which literally means exit. Exodus begins with the children of Israel, now a great nation, enslaved in Egypt. God calls Moses to lead the children of Israel out of their bondage. We see in Exodus God as rescuer, God as redeemer, and God as one who gives new life. Passover is introduced in Exodus, and Passover is where the blood of the unblemished lamb is assigned to God, and God's judgment passes over those who have the sign of the blood of the lamb. The next book of the Bible is Leviticus, and Leviticus contains the prescribed Mosaic offerings within the tabernacle, which would later be the temple. In some Jewish traditions, the book of Leviticus is called the book of the priests. The book of Numbers is the fourth book of the Bible, and it begins and ends with a counting of the people. Although God has used both Aaron and Moses to lead the people of Israel to the promised land, remembering one of the promises to Abraham, the people refused to trust in the Lord their God. This will be a major theme for the rest of the whole biblical narrative. Deuteronomy, the final book that we're going to cover in this section. Deuteronomy literally means second law. Both Deuteronomy and Leviticus contain large portions of law. I want to highlight chapter 28 and 26, respectively, because it's important to hear God promising, if you obey, blessing, and if you disobey, cursing. Both the kingdom of Israel and the kingdom of Judah will disobey God, and they'll eventually be exiled, deported from the land of promise. And they're going to stay in exile until the restoration. And that brings us to the end for this video. We've covered the Torah, or the books of Moses, or the law, or the Pentateuch. Pentateuch comes from the Greek, which literally means the 5 scrolls. When you come back, we'll continue this overview of the Bible, beginning the historical books with Joshua.